believe that it's almost Thanksgiving. And I feel like part of that is because that means that I am now further away from my daughter just turning 1, which is absolutely mind-blowing to me. When we were in our free life coaching call last week, something that came up a lot was, how do I handle food in parties, or when the food is out of my control, or when the food is just different than what I'm used to? And with Thanksgiving being right around the corner, I felt like this was something very important for us to talk about. And even if you're listening to this when it's not Thanksgiving, this is something that you can apply to any kind of special food, event, occasion. So vacations, parties, celebrations, etc. It's not just Thanksgiving. One of the things that I always have my clients in Binge Eating Unchained think about when it comes to handling foods in environments like Thanksgiving, parties, celebrations, etc., is that this is the test that they have been preparing for. Like, all the work that they've been doing with me and all the work that they've been doing on their relationship with food, like, this is when we get to see the growth. And this is when we get to put all of the practice kind of into play. And no different than studying for a test, could you go to that party, or could you go to Thanksgiving without necessarily practicing or doing any work? Like, could you go take a test without necessarily studying for it? Sure. But is it the most enjoyable thing? Not necessarily. Could you pass it? Yeah. Does it always happen that way? No. And so the thing that I want you to think about when it comes to Thanksgiving, special events, when it comes to the food, is that the practice starts now. We're not talking about Thanksgiving, we're talking about now. We're not talking about the party, the event, we're talking about now. So if you want to get more comfortable around food at parties, events, etc., we have to start working on it now. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I see people making when it comes to feeling better around food in these circumstances, is that they focus so much on the special occasion and don't focus on the now. So let's talk about the now. Let's talk about how to get you prepped and ready so that when it comes to the special event, you're feeling ready and you're feeling a lot more confident with it. So as I said, this is practicing now. So what do I mean by that? I want you to think about all of the foods that you're going to be around and the things that make you anxious or nervous and uncomfortable. What can you essentially recreate in your home now to help you practice with those certain situations? So for example, if you're really uncomfortable being at parties because there's just food out all the time, can you maybe you start practicing with like a low trigger food, but you just keep that food out on the table, in sight. Let's say for you, that's starting with an apple. Okay, well, you're not just gonna put a bowl of apples on your table. I mean, for you to really practice, I want you to cut up that apple, and I want you to just leave that apple on the table, cut up, for you to see, for you to walk by, for you to be around. If you eat at the same time every single day, and so when there are events like Thanksgiving or celebrations where meals and food times are at different times and that makes you really uncomfortable, switch up your meal times throughout the day. Can you challenge yourself to eat lunch a little bit earlier, eat lunch a little bit later, dinner earlier, dinner later, etc., so that you can get comfortable having meals at different times? If you are not comfortable with other people plating your food, if you really like having control over what you put on your plate, maybe you practice by asking your kiddos, your spouse, a friend to plate your food. That would be a really good thing to practice with. Certain foods, let's say mashed potatoes, pies, crackers, pastas, rice, anything that you feel like you don't regularly eat or you're not comfortable with, can you practice having those in your meals now so that when the event comes up, you are not so overwhelmed and also that food doesn't feel especially exciting because you've already worked on neutralizing it? Now, I know that you might not always know what all the food is going to be, right? So like with Thanksgiving, we know pretty much what is going to be on the table, but let's say you're going to a wedding and you're like, I don't know what the meal is going to be served, so I don't know how to really practice now. You can just practice with different foods. Maybe you just practice with foods that you don't regularly have. Think about your fear foods, because the end-all be-all goal is that you have this food in front of you, you eat this food, you don't know what the food is, and you are okay. You are okay, you can handle it. You know that whatever happens, whatever food is put in front of you, you will be okay. And that's essentially what you're doing here. So when it comes to the food prep and when it comes to getting comfortable around foods, again, I want you to think about what are the situations at parties, at events that make you uncomfortable with the food. Is it that it's at a different time? Is it that there's food always out? Is it the foods that are being served? What is it? And is there any way that you can take that and start practicing now, challenging yourself to get comfortable with those things? The other thing that I will mention when it comes to prep that I know is a game changer for my clients as well is figuring out what you are going to wear now. Waiting until the very last day, if you are not someone who is regularly getting dressed, if you are someone who is working on a better relationship with your body, if you're someone who regularly lives in workout clothes, if you're someone who isn't really great with style, and then it comes to that day and you're trying to get dressed and things don't fit right or things don't look the way that you wanted them to look, that can start the day off on just not the best foot. So knowing exactly what you're gonna wear well in advance so you know and give yourself time if you need to get a new pair of jeans, if you need to get a top, if anything needs to change, you can figure that out now. So when that day comes, you know exactly what you're wearing and that's not a trigger for you. And you're in an outfit that makes you feel good, which is just gonna help with your mood throughout the day when you're already in an anxious and triggering situation. So all that to say, prep begins now. It is not fair to yourself to not do anything different and then go into this event and expect things to be different. It's just not fair for yourself. Could it sometimes be just like a fluke thing and things are fine? Sure, but that is just like a test. If you don't study, could you pass? Sure, but is it guaranteed every single time? No. And is it enjoyable when you go into a test without studying? No. It's just more stressful and it's a lot easier and it makes the experience way more enjoyable when you prep for it. This is a different kind of prep than you're used to. This is not losing weight before. This is not cutting calories before. This is getting yourself comfortable and ready to handle the foods so that when they are there in front of you, you are okay, you're on pace. And this experience can be more about the experience itself rather than the food. Because if you think about all of these experiences that you've had where the food is taking you out of that experience, I mean, those are moments and memories that you're not gonna get back. And that is a lot of your whys. Like when I talk to you guys about why you want recovery, why you want to heal your relationship with food, a lot of you say that I don't want to miss out on any other time. Like I don't want to miss out on any more time with my partner. I don't want to miss out on any more time with my friends, with my family, with my kids. And I want you to think about how this has happened in the past and use that as fire for when you're like, I don't want to practice now. I don't want to do that now. I mean, we don't want to do these things, right? It's uncomfortable. But that's why feeling good cannot be your driver when you are working on healing. And I know that that sounds very counterintuitive, but the choice that is gonna make you feel good right now might not be the best option for you, right? Like it might feel good to stay safe and it might feel good to keep eating at the same exact times that you eat every single day. And it might feel good to keep eating all of your safe foods, but that's not helping you. And it's definitely not gonna make you feel good when you don't have that control anymore. And so even though it feels good, focus less on what you're feeling right this moment and what you ultimately want. I want to be able to go to that event and be okay. I want to be able to have Thanksgiving and not be stressing about the food the whole time. I want to be able to go to book club and not think about the charcuterie board on the table and be so focused on that for the entire book club, meaning like I don't want that anymore. And if you don't want that anymore, that means we have to start right now. Not Monday, not tomorrow, right now. Like literally, what can you do right now, today, your next meal, the next time you eat, to practice getting more comfortable, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone just a little bit to get you ready for these events. The second thing that I think is important to acknowledge is that diet talk around events, around holidays especially, is just going to be louder. If you can just expect it rather than pretend like that's not a reality, it makes it a lot easier to manage. Does that mean that it's enjoyable to listen to? Absolutely not. However, again, this is practice getting yourself comfortable with setting boundaries and remembering and getting really clear on why you are doing what you are doing. The goal is not to be afraid of diet talk. The goal is not to avoid diet talk. I mean, yes, mute things that you can mute and set boundaries where you need to set them, but I don't want you to live in fear of encountering diet talk. I don't want you to live in fear of, oh my gosh, if somebody says something about fasting, or if someone says something about dieting, or if someone says something about losing weight, I'm not going to be able to handle it. So I need to make sure that I'm not around that. Obviously, we want to make sure that you are not just putting yourself in harm's way to put yourself in harm's way, and at the same time, you don't have control over what is going to come out of other people's mouths. What you do have control over is what is going on in your head, how you respond in your brain when somebody says something diety, and the boundaries that you set up around that, either the boundaries with them or the boundaries that you have with yourself. So what I mean by that is, when I'm saying boundaries with them, what you tell them you want to talk about and what you don't want to talk about with you. If it feels harder to set a boundary and tell someone, you know, diet talk is just not on the table for us, or you know what, diet talk is just not something that I engage in. A boundary with you, you know what, I am just not gonna sit next to them. I am not going to go out of my way to talk to them at this part of your event. That would be more of an example of setting a boundary with yourself. So this is expecting the diet talk is gonna happen, expecting the diet talk is gonna get louder around these events, especially the holidays, right? Like, I'm just thinking about right now how there's a lot of burn it off mentality talk, and when it comes to Thanksgiving, there is fasting for the big feast, and, you know, gotta make sure that we're saving our calories or whatever. And when you can hear that, you can hear that talk, and it just kind of like rolls off your shoulder, like, oh my goodness, like, I remember what it used to feel like to think like that, and I'm so happy that I don't think like that anymore. Oh my gosh, if they're saying this out loud, like, I can't imagine what's going on in their head. Or, oh my gosh, like, I remember when I used to be so focused on burning it off because I was so afraid of food, and I know what they're feeling right now, and I feel so sorry for them because I know what it feels like to be that way, where you go from less of a, that was so triggering, and I feel personally victimized by that comment, to I feel a lot of compassion for you because I know what it feels like to be in that mentality, and I'm so grateful and happy that I'm working to get out of that right now. I feel like that's a really, really helpful mindset to have, knowing that the talk is just going to be louder at this time of year. The next thing that I recommend, and I know that this is kind of funky and it's going to take some practice and working on, but to treat these meals just like normal meals. When it comes to celebrations, parties, Thanksgiving, vacation, whatever, it's really easy to fall in this mentality of, well, it's a vacation, so who cares? Or, you know, it's Thanksgiving, everybody goes big, so like, what does it matter? And I'm not saying that you need to restrict yourself and you can't enjoy all of the food. And I don't think that it needs to be a planned binge. And I think what happens often is that because there's so much rigidity, so much control, so much thinking about food when someone is quote unquote on track, and then these parties and these celebrations are quote unquote off track, it's this permission to just kind of like throw everything out the window and just get it all in now because I'll be better tomorrow. But when you're just thinking about this as a normal meal, this is just another meal, then it doesn't have to be this on track, off track, I'm gonna be better tomorrow, just like emotional thing. It can just be like, this is no different than any other meal. Maybe the food is a little bit different than I usually prepare. Maybe the time is a little bit different than I normally have it, but it's no different than a regular meal. I remember last Thanksgiving, and this usually happens after Thanksgiving, and I'm just thinking about Thanksgiving in particular because it's coming up. And we had Thanksgiving, I want to say around 4. And afterwards, everyone was talking about how full they were. And I just sat there being like, I feel great, that was delicious, because I just treated it like a normal meal. Yes, I had maybe a lot more different items on my plate than a regular meal because I'm not gonna cook like 10 different things when I have dinner at home by myself or with my husband. But I ate the exact same way that I normally eat. I know that I don't need to go ham on the mashed potatoes because if I want mashed potatoes any night of the week, I can have them. And if I want cranberry sauce on a Tuesday in January, I can have cranberry sauce on a Tuesday in January. And if I really want to go out of my way to make stuffing in December, January, February, like I could, these foods aren't going away. And that's the goal, right? It's to be able to have these moments and have these experiences, enjoy the food, but not feel sick afterwards. And is it always perfect? No. And are there meals and events and vacations and situations where I end the meal and I was like, oh, that was so good. I ate a little bit more than was comfy in my stomach? Absolutely. I'm not saying that I never leave a holiday meal feeling overly full. Like, that's not true. I will say that that happens fewer and further between, though, as I continue to treat it as a normal meal. With that being said, just like treating it as a normal meal, I treat the entire day the same. So let's take Thanksgiving, for example. I still have breakfast and lunch. And people judge me. They do. They do. Ryan, we're just about to have Thanksgiving. You're really going to make a sandwich right now? Yeah, I'm really going to make a sandwich right now. And guess what? There's not this urgency to get all of the food. There's also not this panic. I think that something that isn't talked about enough when it comes to struggling with your relationship with food is the sheer panic you feel when you believe that there is not going to be enough food when you're in an event like this and there's special foods. Like, I would literally rush up to the buffet line. Like, I would be so anxious if I was not first in line to get food, because I was like, what if somebody else eats it? What if it's gone? And sharing food? Are you joking? Sharing? Like, the thought of getting a plate of desserts and sharing all of that, like, that was out of the question. And all of those things, they do fade away as you work on healing your relationship with food, but also that urgency immediately goes away if you're not going into the meal overly hungry. And one of the best ways to not go into the meal overly hungry is obviously if you eat regularly, like how you usually do throughout the day, despite knowing that you're gonna have a different meal at night, or there's gonna be more calorically dense foods at night, or you might have a little bit more dessert than you normally do. That's okay, right? Like, this is just one day, or it's a week, or it's a weekend, and it's all relative. And when you zoom out and you look at your eating as a whole, you don't need to make this one meal or this one weekend or this one situation mean so much. Because I will tell you, when you do make it mean so much, what happens? It spirals into a binge. It spirals into more and more and more effort eating. And then you end up consuming more than if you just enjoyed it, you let yourself have it, and then you moved on. Another thing that I will mention is that when you're just at the beginning of healing your relationship with food and doing this practice, this meal is going to be that. It's just going to be practice. And there might be times where you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling anxious, and you might need to step away to just regulate yourself. One of the things that I tell my clients that is really helpful is just go to the bath. Like, there's always a bathroom. Just go to the bathroom and take a breath. Just take a breath. Look in the mirror, take a breath. Remind yourself, I don't need to make this mean so much. I got this. I got this. I can do this. Whether it's because the food is overwhelming, whether it's because you're finding yourself feeling a little bit bingy, whether it's because somebody made a comment, whether it's because you took a picture and you saw it and now you're spiraling about your body, like, whatever the case may be, if you need some time to just like regulate, reset, go to the bathroom, take a breath. Take a moment to just tell yourself that you are okay. Talk to yourself. You know I love talking to yourself. Talk to yourself. Talk yourself through it. And then the last little thing that I just want to mention is that when it comes to events, celebrations, you might be drinking more than you normally do. Or if you don't normally drink, you might be having drinks. And I think that we have to acknowledge what happens when you drink and what alcohol does to your brain. I have an episode on this already. It's episode 104, I believe, where I deep dive why you binge when you drink, or why food feels a little bit more chaotic when you drink. So if you want to hear more about that, go ahead and pop over to episode 104. But the long and the short of it is that if you are using all of this brain power to control your food and try to use willpower, and then you start having drinks, all of that thinking is going to slow down, and you're a little bit more relaxed, you're a little bit more carefree, and it just silences that noise in your brain. And if you're using all this energy all day to control, and then finally there's something, the alcohol, that shuts that off, it's like, oh my God, gotta get it all in now. Like, the best example or analogy that I can use to explain it is, when someone grows up with really strict parents and then they go to college and they go so wild. That is a perfect example of what is happening when you drink. All that to say, I just want to give you a little pep talk that you can do this. You absolutely can do this. This is not something to be afraid of. This is something that I want you to feel empowered about. I want you to feel like this is an opportunity for me to practice everything that I've been working on. And I'm so excited to show myself what I can do. I want you to give yourself the benefit of the doubt that you can handle this. And I want you to give yourself the benefit of the doubt that you do know what to do. Even if this is like literally the first week that you are working on healing your relationship with food, you can do this. Is it going to be perfect? Probably not. But things are never perfect. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is to work on healing. The goal is to be present. The goal is to put into practice everything that you have been learning. The goal is to keep moving forward when things are imperfect. And the goal is to just be in your life and change the story. If you need to tell yourself over and over and over, I don't need to make this mean so much, do it. Do it, because you don't. That's all I have to say. I hope you have a very, very happy Thanksgiving, happy celebration, happy holiday, and I will talk to you guys soon.